I give a small introduction about the development of, I try mainly the developments in the left party, and then I bring as an example this opposition against this large-scale development in Berlin, where I can talk a little bit about the contradiction between electric socialist party policy and social movements. So first about the Party the Left. It's in German Die Linke. It was founded. It is a successor of the state party of the GDR, mainly founded by critical people from the GDR. So it's not. It's a kind of. It is from the name. It is the same than the leading party of the GDR, but it is mainly the people that are strong in this are the people who were the opposition inside the party against the GDR, so the more critical socialist people in the GDR. And then I try first to bring a little bit about the history, and then the next major change was that there was a big opposition inside the Social Democratic Party, because after there were built a Green Party and Social Democratic coalition in the late 90s, the Social Democratic Party followed a kind of policy that were like with the third way policy of Tony Blair, and there was a strong opposition inside the Social Democratic Party, led by Oscar Lafontaine, who was at first in the coalition the financial minister of this party, and he is a strong left-wing Keynesian politician. And he, together with more critical people in the union and some Trotskyists, founded then the, in German, Wahlalternative Soziale Gerechtigkeit, that is translated election alternative social justice. That is mainly, I would say, a left Keynesian party that then in 2007 joined together with the Party of the Democratic Socialism to the left nowadays. And that is an important change, because one of the big difficulties in the left party, or formerly Party of the Democratic Socialism, was that it has only a strong base in the East and was not a party that has any possibilities on the national level. And also once were thrown out of the parliament because we have 5%. You have to be higher than 5% to be presented in the parliament as a party. And so now there is this party that is a connection of different wings inside the left. I think there are mainly three major wings in the left party. That is, on the one side, it is that is a wing that is wing is so richtig. It's richtig. Yeah. Because it's a direct translation from German, and I'm sometimes not sure if it works. The biggest wing is it's mainly supported by the East. It's people with a very reformistic policy, but on the same time very open to new social movements that are mainly the critical people from the GDR that have to some degree learned from this orthodox and authoritarian party policy, that they want to be want to have a party with a wide range of different opinions, and they strongly support that as a party that goes to elections, that you have to participate in governments, and they strongly support. And I think it's also an outcome of the many people that were involved all their life, different to people from the West. They were always in a kind of opposition, very much members of the left party from the East, were part of the state apparatus, and so has all their life has to deal with real politics. For example, the strongest fraction in this wing is the Berlin left party that founded one of the first coalitions of the Social Democrats. So since the early 2000s, Berlin is governed by a coalition of the Social Democratic Party and the left, but with very much difficulties, because the policy that in a city that is nearly bankrupt, you have not much possibilities to make a also a left reformistic policy that cost money. They had to decrease the wages. They were the first state in Germany where the state go out of the contract with the unions to make it possible to decrease the wages, and they also did some privatization. They stopped a little bit of the privatization. So there's not so big policy change in Berlin. The second big wing in the party, the left, is and that is dominated by people that are coming from the unions, mainly from the West, is a kind of left Keynesian policy that tries to. They are very state-centered, very authoritarian policy. Not very open to the new social movements, to things like queer policy. They are totally not open. But on the other side, they have a kind of strong view of a kind of alternative policy, but that has a problem, that is, don't realize the breaks that happened since the 70s in the society. They are trying to introduce a kind of policy with strong unions, with a strong state apparatus that operates in the economy. That is the second wing, and the third wing, that is, I think, from both strong in the East and the West, is the anti-capitalist wing. That is more the radical Marxist people that in the East are founded more in the more orthodox part of the former state party, and in the West it's many people that are coming from socialist parties that existed in the 80s, like the German Communist Party. That was a party that supported the GDR, but also all the smaller Trotskyist parties and different Maoist parties. It was not really possible for the party, the left, to gain power or gain more votes after the crisis, and that is a big. That was not only for left parties like this, but also for the big organizations of the anti-globalization movement. That is mainly ATTAC. That is a kind of organization that try to do something in between building up a party and a social movement. So it's a kind of strong organization that tries to connect different branches in the anti-globalization movement, but don't want to build up a party. And the main aim is global control of the financial market. But all of this left groups were not able to really gain power in the situation of crisis. And I think that has to do with several things in Germany. On the one side, after the Red-Green coalition lost power, the Social Democrats started again to try to make more social politics and tried to call for state control of financial markets, try to support the unions. But also the Conservative Party did to some degree the same. Under Merkel is, I would say, she's not so much conservative than Kohl. She's very strongly supporting a state active policy. For example, yesterday, I haven't read it to the end, so I don't know really the outcome, but there are introduced regulation of hedge funds, regulation of that Leerverkäufe, that you cannot sell on the stock market before you have bought it. Also, the Conservative Party started to introduce controls of financial markets that was very strongly the demand of the left party, but also the more reformist left forces like Attac. And they had not developed a kind of alternatives. They tried all the time to criticize only the politics for being neoliberal, but in a time of crisis, most of the parties didn't do. Most of the parties tried, I think, to do much more state control that were possible in the US. For a political party to do. Then another problem is that this left Keynesianism that is very strong in the left party didn't function really as an alternative for most of the people. It is able to attract some of the older union members, but all the social movements that have a strong background by younger left people have were very often developed as in strong critic of this Keynesian welfare states that existed in Germany, that to some degree made it possible for working class people to have more money and consume, but don't thought about ecological questions, don't thought about democratic control. And as a second thing, I think a left Keynesian policy is it is good sometimes to bring it up as a critic, but as it could be seen in the participation of the left party in different governments, it is not really possible to introduce it anymore. Because there are so many, especially not on a national level. When you have all, for example, the European Union forces states to do a special kind of policy. And so you cannot only say on a national level to develop a kind of state active policy that tries to Geld ausleihen, to lend money on, because there's a strict control of the Haushalt. I forgot what's the name. Of the budgets. There's a strong budget control, so it's the kind of policy the left much people in the left party introduce are not really possible to do on a national, and much more not on a state level. And now I try to talk a little bit about this large-scale development I have participated, and the role of the left party, but also the social movement. First I try to bring some backgrounds, and I think the most important thing is first I try to explain what this project is about. It's a large-scale river side redevelopment project, and which mainly aims on cultural industries. There's a big entertainment hall that is already built by an American company, Anschutz. There is the German headquarter of MTV, the German headquarter of Universal Music, and planned overall very much offices, and the loft buildings are planned. Most of it is not built. Perhaps it's easier if I show some photos of it. This is how it shall look like if it's planned. The river is the Spree. That was the border between east and west, and it's adjacent to Kreuzberg. That is the district where the radical left is most strong. That were since the 70s the main place for urban struggles, and that is a district with a green mayor. The Green Party gets around 40% at elections in this district. It was the first district where a Green Party candidate get direct elected to the national parliament. So it has a strong left background. It is the main part for alternative culture. Many students live there. The alternative culture also happens. Oh, it's a kind of slideshow. You can see all the developments, and later are photos from the actions of the movements against it. In this area, there were it is an old industrial site. In the time of the GDR, there were around, I think, 20,000 jobs in manufacturing that are all lost. No, not only one is left. It was vacant for some time. Some part is also infrastructure area from the German train company that is also out of use. It was the old freight station for the trade to the east, to Russia from Berlin. That is with the industry that is gone, and with the disconnecting to the between the East German and the Russian economy also was not necessary anymore. So there were a large amount, and part of it are also it's the old city harbor. So it's mainly vacant industrial areas that beginning with the 90s were strongly used by alternative culture projects, and with the first Berlin Techno Club, for example, that run by the people that later made the Love Parade. That was a really strong, really large happening, later strongly supported by the city, attracted at the peak time over 1 million people to Berlin. And these people started in this area in an old factory with illegal parties. And it's all the time a strong part of subculture, but with the settlement of Universal Music and all the entertainment companies, they started to trying to brand all this land with the subcultural users to try to sell it on the international market. Many enterprises bought land up after the 90s, when there was the expectation that from the policy that Berlin will be again, like before the Second World War, one of the leading global cities. There were expectations, for example, of a growth in inhabitants from 3 million to 5 million people living in Berlin. and in 2010, and the numbers of inhabitants haven't changed much. The economic development didn't happen. We have in Berlin, there's only the deindustrialization happened, but not what was planned in all those areas that you have the international important service economy. You have no banks that moved from Frankfurt to, that is the main part for the banks in Germany. No bank moved. There are only very few international headquarters that moved to Berlin. I think there's not much economic power, and that was the reason for the Left Party, and I think that shows a little bit the problem how the Left Party reacts to social movements to support this kind of development, because they hoped to bring the workers that lost their job in the deindustrialization back their jobs. But in reality they sold only the land with city support to real estate developers. All the industries that came there were, on the one side, it were this large-scale international entertainment companies that brought their employees with them, or hired people that are not the same people that lost their jobs because they have not the education for this high-quality service jobs. But the most jobs that were gained were in call centers, in security, people working in this in this entertainment hall. That's mainly low-paid, non-unionized jobs. And a few years ago, when the plans really for this area were published, people mainly from the autonomous scene in West Berlin tried to build up a movement against this development. The main means they used were bringing up a public petition, but also different kind of actions to bring it into the media, but also were able to, for people to support, and also there were some people doing different kind of militant actions against some of the developers. But the main thing from this movement against this development was a public petition that were introduced by the new government, that is possible to bring up a petition that to change policy in the city. You had to have a special quorum. I think it's around 20% of the people in the district have to say, yes, I want to sign this petition. And we won this petition with, I think it was around 85% that voted for us and 15% against us. So it were, and we had a quorum much larger than the 20% that go to the election. So it were strongly won, and the quorum wanted mainly to stop all the development in the riverside and make it possible to have a participant plan for the people in the neighborhood. But then the outcome was mainly there was not even one support by the Left Party, because they wanted to, they always try to, they argue they have to make a real policy, but they always try to be a very confident partner in the government, and wanted to stay with this kind of project and don't want it. They argued always you cannot always look on the local level. You have to look on the citywide level, and in an economic situation like the situation in Berlin, it is very important to attract all kinds of investors in the city.